So you're sitting at home watching Nicolas Cage steal the Declaration of Independence for the 100th time and say to yourself, this can't be possible. Well, guess what? It kind of is. Because today on Focus 5, we are bringing you 5 of the most unique and mind-boggling robberies to happen in the last 20 years. And guess what? Most of them got away with it. So grab your popcorn, cancel your Saturday night plans, and strap in for an adventure looking at some of history's most unique and daring robberies. And guys, just a reminder, we don't encourage any of this stuff, but we sure do find it entertaining. After all, stealing is bad, unless it's someone's heart. The first heist requires us to travel to Canada, where liquid gold was up for grabs in the Great Maple Syrup Heist of 2012. Yes, we said that right. Maple syrup. Back in 2011, a group of thieves, 16 to be exact, in Quebec, Canada, siphoned syrup from thousands of barrels and warehouses rented by the Federation of Maple Syrup Producers, an organization that represents nearly 7,000 syrup collectors and controls nearly 80% of the world's maple syrup supply. Yeah, 80% of the world's maple syrup. That's a lot of syrup. They almost got away with it too. See, they knew the barrels of syrup in storage were only inspected once a year, so the thieves replaced the syrup with water. Then they quickly repackaged and transported the sweet syrup to New Brunswick, about 900 kilometers south of Quebec and right on the United States border. Once there, it was sold to black market exporters and actual legitimate buyers around the world. And it was working, until the yearly inspector came around. Now, you might be thinking that inspector tasted each barrel and knew something was wrong by the watered-down mixture. But that's not what happened. The lazy thieves didn't fill the barrels up enough to match the normal weight of the missing syrup. So due to the barrels being lighter in weight than the others, the inspectors red-flagged the entire batch. Once each barrel was checked, the Federation realized they had been robbed of almost 10,000 barrels of maple syrup, worth an estimated 18 million Canadian or 14 million US dollars. But like most of these robberies, someone didn't get their cut and tipped off the authorities to the ringleader, Richard Valliere. And just 9 months ago, his sentence was given. Pay back 7 million US dollars, about 10 million Canadian, or spend 6 years in prison. The story continues and the movie rights are sold for the stickiest robbery to ever happen. Now, let's move on to a different type of brown liquid. Bourbon. Yes, people will steal everything, even alcohol. Back in 2013, Gilbert Toby Kurtzinger, a Buffalo Trace employee, used his inside connections to allegedly steal hundreds of bottles of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon worth over $100,000. But how did Toby get away with this? Let's backtrack. In 1988, Toby, described as a gym rat, a good old boy in Kentucky slang, started working at the Buffalo Trace distillery for a whopping $7.50 an hour. A few years pass and bourbon starts to rise in popularity and the collection of ultra-rare bourbons begins to skyrocket. That's when his network of doctors, lawyers, and other bourbon enthusiasts started requesting those rare bourbons at a premium price. The I know a guy, Toby, supposedly began stealing bottles from the factory and continued to do so for almost 15 years. His run as the Bourbon King came to a screeching halt with Pappygate in 2013, as Franklin County Sheriff Pat Melton received a call from Buffalo Trace that over 200 bottles of rare bourbon had gone missing. So the sheriff started a massive investigation with hundreds of people being interrogated about the missing bottles. All eyes pointed to Toby, but the stolen bottles were never found and no one could prove Toby took them. He got away with it. But that wasn't the only thing Toby was stealing, and in 2015 he was indicted for other stolen goods and even steroid sales, but only ended up serving a month in prison. The lesson here is if you consume all the evidence, well, there won't be any evidence left to indict you unless you sell steroids too. This next heist ended up being a really sticky situation. In 2017, a beekeeper named Pavel Vertinov, located in Sacramento, California, robbed almost $1 million worth of beehives and honey from all over the Fresno County area and even as far as Montana. In a well-planned heist, flatbed trucks would line up at night and steal pallet after pallet from unsuspecting bee farms. They would then rebrand the pallets and sell them on Pavel's land by the next morning. The common theme here is you get caught when you get lazy. And Pavel got lazy. He didn't organize the stolen pallets or group the same bees together, things that all beekeepers did. That raised a red flag with local authorities and an investigation was started. Pavel was arrested later that year, but no state charges have been brought against him as the case will be turning federal. Keep checking the news for updates on his possible sentencing as he goes down in history as the biggest bee thief. Let's keep the buzz of sweet heists going and fly on over to the small town Neustadt, located in Germany, where also in 2017 they were robbed of over 20 tons of Nutella and Kinder chocolate eggs over a single weekend. According to German newspapers, the heist was worth a giant sum of $80,000. Local authorities had and still have zero leads, and they quickly reached out to the public for help. They felt someone would tip them off if the sale of massive quantities of chocolate for pennies on the dollar seemed odd. It's been over 5 years now and no one has been charged. Like the Bourbon case, looks like they ate all of their evidence and got away with just a stomachache. And lastly, leave it to Russia to come up with one of the wildest heists on our list. Back in 2008, a small group of villagers living in Komarovo, Russia, decided to rob a church in plain sight. Under the guise of a legitimate construction company, this local group of villagers started to tear down the 200-year-old building and sell each brick and stone to locals at 1 ruble per brick. For reference here, 1 ruble, the Russian form of money, was worth about 27 cents back then. While the 200-year-old building was donated back to the church, it sat dormant and decrepit for many years with zero religious artifacts or any valuables left inside. The village came together to remove a dilapidated building and brought some money into the town for it, and no one was charged. We guess that poses the question, is stealing worth it? Give that a thought while you check out one of our many other top 5 videos on the channel, will ya? And thank you for stopping by and learning a little bit more about the strange and dangerous heists that have gone on around the world. Did we forget one? Know some more juicy details on one we mentioned? Make sure you tell us below in the comments and don't forget to hit that subscribe button too.